Hi, I'm actually still waiting for the other video to upload. The sound quality seems to be better on this laptop, but the upload speed takes forever. But I want to make this now rather than wait while the ideas are still fresh in my mind. I've just been watching the CNN coverage of this. The latest mass shooting in America, Monterey Park, California, which I believe is a suburb of Los Angeles. So there was a mass shooting at Lunar New Year, Chinese New Year event. Apparently, this was a very big event, 100,000 people, um, and I guess there's a big Asian American community there. But 10 people killed. This was a major incident. Sadly, nothing unusual in America or California for that matter. Um, and it would seem that there's not much more to say about gun violence. Like everything that could be said has been said. But there's an angle of this particular incident I want to look at a little bit, discuss a little bit, which is the assumptions that are made in this sort of incident, where you have a minority community that are the victims. There is always a knee jerk assumption, particularly on the left, that, well, it must be a hate crime. Now, in a way, that's logical because there has been an upsurge of hate crime against the Asian American community in recent years, particularly since the pandemic. So you might think it's a reasonable thing to consider. But here's the catch, or here's the big caveat. The gunman, in this case, was an Asian man, a 72-year-old Asian man who's now deceased. I think he took his own life as opposed to being killed by the police. But that really flies in the face of the whole narrative about some angry young white man who's, targeted the Asian community. This is not to say that such incidents don't happen. It happened last year in Buffalo, New York. It happened in Charleston, the Dylan Roof incident. So definitely America's had a history of racially motivated mass shootings. But I think this should be a lesson for the left. I think every mass shooting is a lesson for the right that they can't be complacent. And, I think the American right, for the most part, is stubborn. I think they're largely in denial of the problem of gun violence. I think it is what it is. It's America has a serious problem, and it's no good saying, um, trying to draw false sort of conclusions like it's only criminals that kill people or whatever. For all we know, this guy probably didn't have a serious criminal record. But again, that's speculation. We don't know. We don't know what his motivation was. It could have been a family dispute that got out of hand. Often that's the case. It could have been a workplace grudge. Who knows? But for whatever reason, the 72-year-old man decided to do this evil, terrible thing, kill 10 people and probably wound many more, and devastate another community. Um, but it does bug me how the left automatically want to inject racism into absolutely everything. There was a woman on, I'm not sure exactly what her capacity was, but a white woman, and she was saying, "Oh, let's not call it a hate crime, just because it may not be racially motivated doesn't mean it's not a hate crime." Well, if the suspect is Asian American, he may have hated his victims on a personal basis. Like I say, it may have been some sort of personal grudge, but by definition, it can't be a hate crime because you can't commit a hate crime against your own demographic unless maybe it's revealed the victims were women. Then it might be misogynistic or something. Who knows? We just don't know what his motivation was. If it turns out he had some sort of note or manifesto explaining his actions, that might reveal more about his thinking. Um, but by definition, you can't commit a hate crime against your own demographic. If I shoot a lot of white people, that's not hate crime. It's awful, but it's not hate crime because I'm a white guy, right? Now, if I was to I mean, it's even alien to me as a British citizen talking about these things because we just don't have this problem in the UK, not to the same extent anyway, not even close. Um, I think that the left is pretty shameless on how they inject racism into everything. If the right is stubborn about the problem of gun violence, the left is stubborn about, you know, not sort of acknowledging that not every incident is connected with race. And I guarantee you, there will be woke people out there who will be analysing this and say, oh, well, it doesn't matter if the suspect was Asian American, it was still a byproduct of white supremacy. So somehow, this angry old Asian guy who done this terrible thing, his actions are somehow the fault of white racists. They're responsible for their own actions, and they should be held to account for their own actions. And I don't want anyone to misunderstand me. In no way am I trivializing the problem of racism in America. But you even see a situation where Asian Americans have been targeted in racially motivated hate crimes, and that it's been proven to be the motivation, but the suspects have been black. So how, even then, oh well, it's still a product of white supremacy because the black thug who attacked this elderly Asian woman is somehow acting out of white supremacy. Let's hold people accountable for their own actions. So if you have a white racist like Dylan Roof or the gunman in the Buffalo case, they're racists, they're far right, they're white supremacists. And I do think that's a serious problem in America. I don't think it's a small thing. But each case needs to be looked at on its own merit and its own circumstances, although I think there's a generic problem of gun violence. But each individual case is different. So that needs to be considered. I'm going to round this up because, like I say, the upload time takes forever. But to any American viewers, if you're of the political left persuasion, we'll probably find common ground with the need to do something about the problem of gun violence. But it does annoy me that a lot of the American left immediately have this knee-jerk reaction. It must be racism. I say the American left, also people pushing an agenda. I mean, there was a group called Stop AAPI Hate, and they released a statement. Now they were obviously set up to combat anti-Asian hate crimes, but I hope they acknowledge that in this case it was one of their own. I mean, this is a thing that's often underreported. It's a bit like the problem of black on black violence, which is rampant in America. You look at any inner city, Chicago, St. Louis, New Orleans, that is a massive problem. But that doesn't get anywhere near the amount of media coverage to the same extent as for example, a hate crime. They might report it. They might say, oh, at the weekend there was a gangland shooting in Chicago, another 3 people killed or whatever. But they won't say, what does this tell us about the problem of black on black crime, which is rampant in America. Um, Asian on Asian crime, I would say, is probably much less of an issue from what I gather. But, maybe there's issues around this that need to be looked at. This case is somewhat unusual. The gunman was older, wasn't a young man, 72. Maybe there's issues around alienation in the Asian community with older people. I don't know. Whatever the motivations was, I hope lessons can be learned. But anyone who has put out another racial hate crime or they've brought race into this should immediately retract that because it's inflammatory. It is inflammatory because all that will do is scare the Asian American community even more. It's awful either way. I mean, it makes no difference to the families of the victims whether their loved ones are dead. It's awful whether it was a workplace grudge or a racial hate crime. It's a mass shooting is a mass shooting. But I do think that anyone who is injecting race into this, where that is not the case, and it's obviously not the case, they should retract that immediately. Um, and this is why it's just a reminder of why people should not jump to conclusions in these sort of cases. Let me know your thoughts.